Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins, and I'm joined today by Sarah Townsend. Sarah, you're very welcome to the podcast. Let's begin by asking you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about the world that you're involved in. So over to you, Sarah.
Okay, I'm Sarah Townsend. I have been a copywriter for close to 30 years and as a freelance copywriter for the past 24. I help businesses to identify and articulate the things that make them special, the things that make them stand out, the problems they solve for their customers. And I do that through conversational, compelling human language and predominantly web copy. In 2020, I decided to write a book. My first book was called Survival Skills for Freelancers, and I decided to share my own experiences of freelance life because at that point I'd been freelancing for over 20 years. I'd done everything really pretty badly to begin with, and it had taken me a really long time to work out how to be good at what I do. So I thought I would share some of the challenges that I had faced and the ways in which I had resolved those challenges. It busts the 8 myths of freelancing, and that's things like you don't have to go it alone. Everybody gets imposter syndrome, and you don't have to do it all yourself. That's such an important one. It's got very much a focus on the mental health and the emotional side of freelancing. And I'm really proud to say it's sold in 28 countries, which is pretty good going for a self-published book. 2 years later, I published this little beauty, The Little Book of Confusables, which is all about language and those commonly confused words that trip everybody up, even the writers among us. And I am really proud to say and to demonstrate that that book has just won a gold medal in the eLit Book Awards.
So thank you, Sarah. That's a great introduction to the work that you do. If anybody was going to write a book on survival skills for freelancers, given your tenure as a freelancer, I think you're the perfect author for that. So congratulations on the book. Congratulations on the new book as well, of course, and the award, or the awards that the book is gathering. And it really does resonate with me when you use the term human language, because today we're in this world of AI and machine generated language, but you're really taking the copy that a business has and really make that copy engaging, insightful, and helping consumers or readers of that copy to maybe take action, to engage with them, to get them to understand it more clearly and concisely. And that in itself, I'm always puzzled that a lot of businesses, they kind of struggle with that, don't they? And they maybe don't put as much care and attention into that as maybe they should. What's your view on that as somebody that really specializes in this area?
Yeah, for sure. I could not agree more. And I think with a lot of businesses, they don't appreciate the power of impactful copy and having a direct conversation with their target audience. And I'm not talking about addressing a mass of people who may or may not be interested in buying your product or hiring your service. I'm talking about getting super, super clear on who your audience is and imagining everything you put out there into the ether, from LinkedIn posts and emails to web copy, imagining that one audience member as a conversation. So everything you're pushing out there is addressing that person where they are. It's addressing their fears, their desires, the problems that they're facing, the things that keep them awake at night, and how your product or your service can make their life easier. And really, by sort of telling stories rather than, I know the expression storytelling gets overused, but it's more to do with not talking about, oh, I am a freelance copywriter with 24 years experience, blah, 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 I'm qualified in this, this, this. It's focusing on the target audience. It's focusing on that one person you're having a conversation with. And as you touched on with that we are living in the era of ChatGPT and similar. And there is so much more than ever mediocre copy out there. And people thinking, oh, it's great, I don't need to pay a copywriter anymore. I'll just feed ChatGPT with these prompts and it will come back with fantastic professional copy that we can use on our website, but completely overlooking the fact that by definition, copy that's written by a robot is going to struggle to make that human connection. It's all about something I talk about a lot, and I was just giving a talk at the weekend about this very subject, about human language, to a room full of translators. And I was talking to them about getting the message from the page or the screen to the brain of your reader with the least resistance. So I have this slide that has a brain and it has a page and it has this line that goes along and then it goes squiggles away. And there are all these hurdles and barriers to understanding and all these ways we use language to make us feel like we're the expert, we're the one who knows what they're talking about. But instead of doing that, it actually has this impact of creating a distance between you and your reader. And it's all about getting the message from the page to the reader's brain with the least resistance, smoothing out that friction, I suppose. So using clear and simple language, not overwriting, not using filler words, not using repetition, really respecting that your reader, whoever they are, your target audience is a busy person. We're all busy. I read a study quite recently, or the findings of a study quite recently, that said in the US, the audience are subjected to between 4,000 and 10,000 marketing messages every single day. That's crazy. And we all have these lower tolerances for waffle and blah copy and robot speak and lazy language, and those phrases that we kind of trot out. We would like to apologize for any inconvenience caused. Nobody speaks like that. So just start taking ownership and saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, or let me know if there's anything you need, I'm here to help, rather than please do not hesitate to contact myself should you require further information. We're losing track of who that audience is, and we need to remember to address them as a human, become really conscious of the language we're using on a daily basis, and cutting out all those barriers to understanding and really getting clear on the action we want our reader to take, getting that message as clear and concise as possible so there's the least interference between them picking up a brochure or them visiting our website. And what do we want them to do on the back of reading what they've just read? How can you get your message as clear as possible? And how can you just remember, above all else, that you are addressing a human?
I love that, Sarah. I really do like that a lot. That really does resonate with me. And it's interesting. I'm talking to a lot of people at the moment who are, of course, down the AI rabbit hole with ChatGPT and all the rest of it. But when it comes to something that's important, that matters, that you want to engage, there's a lot of people understand or starting to understand now that you need a human in the loop. And something that somebody else said to me very recently is the phrase, well, it's artificial intelligence, isn't it? It's artificial. And just the way that they phrased that, it kind of really landed, you know? So that human in the loop and that artificialness of artificial intelligence is really that sort of differentiator. And I love what you talk about when you mention the term human content, you know, and that engagement and really getting to the essence of what that reader, whether it's a niche audience that you focused on, or maybe a slightly wider one and a number of sectors for a particular business, but understanding what's going to land with them, what's going to resonate with them. It's really important, isn't it?
It really is. And being able to demonstrate using empathy that your reader, you see them, you recognize where they are, you recognize the challenges they're facing, they feel known and understood and recognized and validated. And those are all really good, strong, powerful feelings when you consider that a recent Harvard study said 95% of buying decisions are based not on logic, but on emotion. So we absolutely have to make those emotional connections with our audience. We have to grow those relationships. And you just touched on something to do with wider audiences. And yeah, of course, our one individual audience member is part of a wider, they may be part of a business or part of a particular community, but they are still one individual, because ultimately your words aren't read by brands or teams or departments, they're read by individual humans. So that's a mistake a lot of us do make. We imagine our target audience as being perhaps a room full of people. And it's something that you'll know as a podcaster that all good radio presenters do. They always imagine that one person they're having a conversation with. And that empowers you to use the word you more, to really personally address your clients, rather than writing web copy, for example, that says, we do XYZ for our clients. Okay, but by using a term like our clients or customers, you're instantly alienating your reader, because your reader wants you to speak directly to them. And it's as if you're creating this distance between you and the reader by using terms like your clients. And they're going to be sitting there, I mean, because we're all selfish. We all just care what's in it for us. So to actually hear, oh, we do XYZ for our clients. Okay, so where do I come into that? I'm not one of your clients. Why should I care? And we all do that kind of so what, whether we're realizing it or not. When we're reading, we've all got this cynical head on, and we're thinking, okay, so what? How does that affect me? What's in it for me? And it's really important that as writers, as we're trying to create these connections with our target audience, with the people who are going to be making the buying decisions, with the people who are in control of going from casual browser into paying client, one of the quickest ways we can influence that happening is by remembering that we're addressing one person. We want to make that process as short as possible by really making those individual connections. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, I like it a lot. There's a lot of wisdom in that comment, and some great learnings there. Now, I want to move us on a little bit, because I do want to talk a little bit about maybe trends, and maybe things change in the design world, in the color palette, in the, social media, new tools come out. There's content and copy everywhere. But how do you keep your finger on the pulse? What's your own learning style? How do you sort of onboard information in today's busy, hectic world?
That's a really good question. I would have to say just immersing myself in what is out there. So I tend to go through phases of being obsessed with one thing, and then I lose that obsession. So I might be obsessed with a podcast, and I might do a real big deep dive, listening to 20 episodes of one particular pod, and then something else comes along and that one's forgotten about, and I can't even remember the name of it or who the presenter was or anything. But if I find something that I find interesting, and it speaks to me using my language, so they're using human language in their own way, I will obsess over that thing for a short period of time and then move on to the next thing to obsess over. So sometimes it may be watching YouTube videos. Sometimes it may be I follow somebody on Instagram, for example, and they do a lot of reels, direct camera reels. And all I do is just scroll through listening to their snippets and sound bites of wisdom. I do read a lot, but because my entire job is reading, it's based on reading. When I read, I don't read a huge number of business books. I tend to read for pleasure and for escapism. So yeah, I will go through phases of reading personal development, self-improvement books. I will go to events, live events. I go to conferences and this sort of thing. I'm very much a believer in the power of investing in your business. You are, as a freelancer or a solo business owner, you are your business. So it's vital to keep your brain stimulated. It's vital, as you say, things just move so fast. It's so difficult to keep up with. I am part of a couple of mastermind groups. And those communities are really stimulating, engaging, enlightening. So it's a right mixture, if I'm perfectly honest. There's not one thing I could pull out right now off the top of my head and genuinely say, this is the thing for me right now. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's great. And as you say, it comes back to that. If that copy's sort of directed at you and it grabs your attention, then you said you sort of obsess on it, you focus on that, those sort of pockets of focus, and then moving on. But it's got to grab that interest in the first place, hasn't it? It's interesting.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you another question, Sarah, about being a freelancer for the amount of time that you have? Because you were a freelancer before it was kind of cool to be a freelancer, maybe, if I could look at it
100%.
that way. Pre-pandemic, you're sort of talking about when, I suppose, I'm trying to think back, that people would talk about getting a proper job, not being a freelancer. And now to come full circle where people are now almost dreaming about living a nomadic life, working as a freelancer, having their own sort of business or their own way of working. But what inspires you? Because to do it for the length of time that you've done, to be at the top of your game, to be writing these books, to be asked to speak at these events on the experience and knowledge that you have, you must have to take inspiration from different places. There must be maybe people that you admire or that have helped you along the way. But what comes to mind when I just say, what inspires you, Sarah?
What inspires me, not who. Okay, I guess creating a life that works for me that's my driver. To begin with, it wasn't, because as you say, 24 years ago, I knew nobody. When I went freelance, I knew nobody who freelanced. I had no inspiration. I had no role model. I had no community. And that's why I'm such a firm believer in those things right now, because we have access to these things. There was no social media in 1999 when I started out as a freelancer, from agency life, from client side life. There was barely any internet. So yeah, I mean, I guess the main reason I went freelance to begin with was because I had been working full-time in an agency down in Bristol and based in Gloucester. And I became pregnant after 3 years of working there. And I loved my job, absolutely loved it, but I didn't want to go back full-time. I knew that I didn't want to be working in Bristol when I had a baby, back home in Gloucester, in nursery a couple of days a week. I wanted to do something that would fit around my life as a new parent. So it seemed the perfect opportunity. I was still married back then. My then husband had a good steady job. We did the sums. We figured that we could risk me going freelance. And the inspiration there was, I'll start off just doing a couple of days a week, and I'll increase that as my kids, two of them then, start school, working longer days as they went into secondary school. Now they're both, my littlest has just turned 21 on Monday this week. And yeah, it's crazy how the time goes, but really I was kind of part-timing it for a lot of my early days as a freelancer. I didn't have inspiration. I didn't know that there were people I could follow. Nowadays, there are so many podcasts out there, communities that are dedicated to freelancing. If you look up freelance podcasts, I've probably been on all of them. I think I've done 60 plus podcast interviews since 2020, since I published Survival Skills for Freelancers. Because that book, I think it's also worth mentioning that that book doesn't just share my voice, my experience, my advice. It also has quotes and experience from 100 other freelancers across various different industries and spheres and sectors. So there are so many people out there to follow on social media, communities you can join, podcasts you can listen to. There are probably YouTube channels dedicated to freelancing. But for me now, it's about creating a life that works around the other things that I love doing. I love my job. I'm one of those people who, you don't want to get me started on how much I love being a copywriter, how much I love taking the bland and boring, dull words that my clients have written and what they call working my magic. They always come to me. They don't say, can you edit this document? They say, can you work your magic on this document for me? That is just, I am here for that. That is my jam. And I just love it. But I can do that around the times of day that I am most productive. I only ever have calls in the afternoon, for example. I start work fairly early so that I can always fit in an hour of exercise every single morning. I can lift some weights, I can do a class. That makes me more creative, more focused, more productive. It just makes me a better person and an all-round more balanced and more productive human, really. So it means I'm a better freelancer for my clients. I'm more inspired. I'm more energetic when I deal with them. And yeah, I have basically designed my day and my week around what are the things that inspire me and make me feel like a success. Because for me, it's not, oh, I'm not driven by the six-figure income, the hustle. I'm not that. For me, success is about being able to create this balance between the job, the work that I find so fulfilling, so enjoyable, and that my clients absolutely love, but also doing the other things I enjoy. So I guess in terms of what inspires me, it is that desire to, currently working 4 days a week. Stopped working Fridays when I turned 50. So I've been doing that for almost 4 years, 4-day week for almost 4 years. And it's been a game changer. And I guess ultimately I will be aiming towards doing a 3-day week, but maybe introducing, see, I'm not great on the automation side or the system side, processes, systems, streamlining, all those things. I probably need a bit of help with that. But if I can introduce certain automations into my business, my hope is that I can come down to a 3-day week, still get the same amount of work fitted in, all done super efficiently. And yeah, just so I guess creating this dream lifestyle for me is what inspires me and what drives me. That was a very long-winded answer to a very short and simple question. I apologize.
But I'm so glad you shared that with us, because you gave us some real insights there, Sarah. And it's so important because you talked about, being able to start early and fit in some life exercise and, looking after yourself and making yourself a better freelancer ultimately. And I think anybody who can design the life and the work that they love, I mean, isn't that where most of us are trying to get to? I think it's such an important thing. And I really do appreciate you sort of giving us a little look at what that looks like for you. And also fascinating that you moved to a 4-day week. And I'm assuming, I mean, I'll ask you the question anyway, but I'm assuming it didn't impact anything. You're as productive as ever, I'm assuming, going 4 days from 5. It wasn't like this huge. We kind of have this thing in our head that we have to work Monday to Friday and a set amount of hours, but I think we're starting to focus a little bit on outcomes and deliverables rather than time served, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
mm. One of the things that I talk about in Survival Skills for Freelancers is moving away from this model of exchanging time for money. So if you're locked into this day rate, hourly rate type way of working, the more experienced you become, the more efficient, the more productive you become, you're actually being penalized, because obviously you can get twice as much or 3 times as much work done in the same amount of time. I used to have a lot of retainer clients. I've moved away from that model now because, again, it's exchanging time for money, and it feels like it downvalues the output and the outcomes you're delivering, because effectively you have clients still coming to you and saying, how much time do I have left this month? Well, me today, 23 years on from me 23 years ago, starting out as a freelancer, I can probably get at least 2, possibly even 3 times as much work done within the same amount of time. So for me, it was a lot to do with moving to a value-based model. It makes pricing kind of easier on the whole. I do have some guideline prices that are always in my head. So things like, writing a 5-page website would cost X. Doing a copy transformation on an existing 5-page website would cost Y. So I spend less time thinking about, oh gosh, I need to do a proposal document and making it overcomplicated. So yeah, in terms of productivity, I get as much done in 4 days a week as I ever did in 5. I don't know how, it's just happened. So I guess there were times that I wasn't as productive as I could be. And yeah, now it just happens.
Yeah.
Financially, I'm pretty much in the same position as I was before, but I have so much more fulfillment because I've got time to do the other things I love.
Like that a lot. Um, you kind of moved into the next thing I wanted to ask you, which is about advice. And you've obviously received advice along the way, maybe not so much in the early days because you were kind of pioneering almost this way of working. But you also share a lot of advice. You said that the what is it, 100 odd people contributed to the first book,
Yeah.
and so you must have an awful lot of advice. But I don't want you to share a lot here, but could you maybe give us a little bit of advice that you often find yourself sharing with people that maybe you think is valuable for our international audience?
It's very difficult to pick one thing. I'm just trying to think what I should choose today. Um, I think one thing that's worth mentioning is, do you have a lot of freelance business owners in your audience, companies of one, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we have a quite a broad mix, but we really focus here on the global discussion with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. And the
Okay.
leaders part of it could be somebody running a solo operation out of the spare room, or it could be a person at the head of their department or running a company in quite a
Mm.
large scale way. So we do kind of run the sort of different shapes, sizes, and industries within the business sector. But yeah, there's a nice mix actually. Um,
Okay, I'm trying to think of something that isn't too freelance centric.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think one thing that kind of stands out for me is the need to, if you are running your own freelance business or company of one, or you are a small business founder or owner, I think it's super important to remember that you need to be visible as a business owner. And that's quite tricky for a lot of freelance business owners, particularly creatives. I find a lot of graphic designers, art workers, editors, proofreaders, those people are quite often introverted. And that's partly why they're drawn or attracted to the idea of working for themselves in the first place, because they have this particular set of skills that they want to share with the world. But what is very often overlooked is that you are the face of your business, and the need to have this really strong personal brand is so important. And without it, it's like people who have a presence on Instagram, for example, and instead of having a photo of themselves, they have their logo in a circle. So anybody who goes onto their profile a lot of time doesn't even know whether they're male or female, or what makes them stand out, what they care about, what lights them up, what gets them out of bed in the morning. I want to know who you are. If I'm going to work with somebody, I don't really care. It's kind of secondary what your experience is, what your qualifications are. I mean, specifically for me, I didn't go to university. I chose not to go to university. I wanted to go out and earn money, and kind of the way I saw it was get ahead of my friends and peers who did go off to university and then started work years later, whereas I'd already been working and earning for 3 or 4 years. So having that brand and being the face of your business is so important. Before I published Survival Skills for Freelancers, I had never done a talk, I'd never done a podcast interview, I'd never done an Instagram live, I'd never shown up on screen. I was way too nervous. I have a very busy brain. Starting to realize quite recently, as an older self-diagnosed woman, that I am actually very ADHD. And I would always be terrified that I would get on camera and I would just go, wah, either I freeze in the headlights, or my brain is zooming off in a million different directions. I go off at tangents, like I've done with answering half your questions today, Simon. But that's all part of who I am. And now I'm more open and honest and real with my clients and authentic, because today's business is all about authenticity and transparency and being real, isn't it? And sometimes admitting a little bit of that vulnerability, or something that you think that you don't necessarily do as well as perhaps other people, it can really often become something that somebody else will say, oh God, well, I'm the same and I've only just realized, and this gives me this as a superpower. So for me, I can get into hyper focus, and that's how I managed to write both of my books in about 3 months, start to finish, 3 to 4 months. So yeah, I think being real and actually putting something of yourself out there, what makes you different? Like, what are the things that my clients know about me? Okay, so I'm EV driver, I'm a choir member, I'm an obsessive birder, I'm an all-round nerd, I'm a massive film fanatic. All those things that I'm putting out there in a business context, but in a softly way, those are the things that have actually had clients coming to me, potential clients going, oh my gosh, we have this in common. We both have solar panels, or, and these tend to be the things that other people are passionate about. And they are so often really strong, powerful, personal hooks to attract business. It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel as if any of those things have anything to do with business, but they do, because they create those, oh, you did this, me too moments. And those are so important in building a relationship. I've just remembered what I was going to say about the qualifications. For me, if I want to pick a new partner in business, I'm not looking at how qualified they are. I'm looking at what makes them stand out. What are the things that make them tick? What do we have in common? Are they a nice person? Are they fun to work with? You have to be prepared to share something of yourself out there, and accept that those are the things that are going to make you different. It's not 24 years of experience. It's not, oh, okay, I've written 2 books. It's not, I'm qualified in XYZ. It is, I'm a bargain queen. It is, I'm a film fanatic. I'm obsessed with birds. It's those little things, those surprising things, and showing parts of ourselves is such an important thing to do in business, because that's how we start to build relationships.
Yeah, and I suppose it comes back to human connection, doesn't it? And maybe
Absolutely.
sometimes, I'm often amazed that when sometimes if you show a little vulnerability and you open up a little bit, it actually builds that much stronger relationship, doesn't it? Which does have a knock-on effect to business. It
Mm.
absolutely does, because otherwise it's just more of the same rhetoric. And I think that's such an important point that you've made there. And while we're talking about things like, authenticity and how we operate in today's world, some people are good at planning. Some people are not so much planners and let, each day comes and goes. So how do you think about your horizon or your roadmap? Do you think about it? Are you a planner? Are you not a planner? How does that work for Sarah Townsend?
I would say I am a huge contrast between being someone who always knows what I'm striving for. I'm incredibly achievement driven, task focused. In terms of longer term, I hinted earlier that eventually I want to be working a 3-day week, but I don't have a time frame for that. I also know that there's going to be a sequel to The Confusables, my second book, which is the one about language. I know that I'll start working on that within the next 6 months. But what I will do is I won't set a time frame and say, okay, in January I'm going to do this. What I'll do is wait until the energy is with the idea, because I'm very driven by energy. I think when you have the energy with an idea or a goal, it just makes achieving that goal so much easier. Whereas if you feel that you're going to set yourself a target for achieving XYZ by February, what if the energy doesn't take you between now and then? It feels as if it's all a slog. It feels as if you're pushing. It's just harder. And I think it shows as well. I think in your final output, I think the fact with both my books, the fact that I went with the energy and I did them when I was so driven, so passionate, so enthusiastic and energetic about those projects, it shows in the final outcome. And conversely, if I had been going, oh, I've set myself this target of writing a book within 6 months, it would have been a very different outcome. So I do very little long-term planning. I always know what I want to achieve. I'm just not a big fan of putting dates to things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose it reminded me of something you said earlier, that when your customers, your clients, the people that you work with come to you and say, "Hey, could you just work your magic on this?" There's something about when that energy's right, when you're working on the book at the right time for you, there's a certain little element that maybe can't be as easily explained. Um, but there's that little bit of magic that's maybe sprinkled in as well that makes all the difference, isn't it? Maybe there's
Exactly.
something there. Yeah. Well, look, finally, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today? And importantly, too, if people want to reach out to you and find out about the services that you offer or the books that you have, where's the best place to point people to, Sarah?
Definitely start with my website. My website has links to my 3 core services. It has links to my speaker details, webinars that I deliver. It has details of both my books. It has links to the landing pages and then links on where to buy. I also do copy coaching sessions, and I've also started doing book coaching sessions for people who know they have a book in them, but they have no idea on how to take it from the seed of an idea into a published book and hopefully a bestseller, like both of mine became. So start at Sarah Townsend Editorial.co.uk. Do connect with me on social media. If you do connect, drop me a message and just say you found me through Simon's podcast. I love to know where connections come from. I'm a very curious person in more ways than one. And yeah, in terms of anything else I want to mention, I think we've done a really good job of covering a lot of ground in a short amount of time. So I'm good with that.
I think you're right, Sarah. And that brings us nicely to the end of this episode of the Global Discussion. So thank you to everybody who's been watching or listening to us. Make sure that you follow, like, subscribe, do everything I need you to do to help support the show. And of course, go and check out everything that Sarah Townsend involved in. Check out the books, look at all the great services on the website that she provides, and really improve your copy and your human engagement. Highly recommended. But thank you so much indeed. I hope you can join me back here for some more discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. It's been a real pleasure today to talk to you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Simon.